Hello, class. Hello, my name is Moises Placencia, and for my portion of this section, I'm going to be covering emotionally disturbed students, right? And I think this is a pretty great topic to cover. There's a lot of important things that we need to flesh out when it comes to this term. So I'm going to start off with a little vignette. Right now, a family of six, right, the two parents and four children have lived with a dark secret. Right, and this secret is that their father is a heroin addict and their mother is a recovering heroin addict. And a sudden change in the family has pushed the mother to relapse and to addiction, leading to an overdose, where the son actually has to revive the mother, right, in the first overdose. And then in the second overdose, she eventually dies. Now, this secret, her death exposed a lot of trauma within the family. Now, within the process of addiction, there's a lot of there's insane amounts of trauma and mistrust, and the mother had been protecting the children from the father's addiction for years, making sure that she walks in first before any other children walk in, just in case the father had OD'd and was dead or convulsing. Making sure that there was no needles left around, making sure that the person wasn't in a condition that would be traumatic to the children. Now they had to learn the right words, right, within the system, meaning that they had to learn the right words to tell social workers, right, to hide their family secret, to educators, right, to family members, to friends, to keep their secret well within the context of their family. And they had to learn how to protect the father's addiction and learn the reasons why the father chose to love a drug more than they would love their children. Now, substance abuse creates deep emotional scars, right? And this dark secret exposed years of trauma, right? And the family actually ranged in age. The family's four children ranged in age from 5 to 17. And once the mother passed away, they experienced different varieties of trauma, right? So loss of trust, anger, confusion, frustration, fear, sadness, depression, even PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And the reason why I know this is because she was my sister, and having her die with her four children. Her youngest was 5. Her second youngest was 9, 13, and 17. Gave me a kind of firsthand experience in the need to understand trauma and understand the different variations that it may express itself. Right now, all the children have had to experience this life-altering um, death, and they all must go to school. So the oldest, 17, was a senior, a promising athlete, right? And he ended up kind of not doing the best, but he actually did it going to school. And they all had to deal with the immediacy of the situation. Now, immediate teachers may have had sympathy, right, for what they experienced, but what happens a year later when there's a teacher who has no idea, has no connection to what's happened? What happens when the event fades from memory? What happens when the only thing that remains is the emotional disturbance? Right, and emotional disturbance is defined as, according to our reading this week, right, is a condition exhibiting one or more of the following characteristics over a long period of time and a marked degree which adversely affects the educational performance in inability to learn that cannot be explained by intellectual, sensory, or health factors, an inability to build or maintain satisfactory interpersonal relations with peers and teachers, a general pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression, or a tendency to develop a physical symptom or fear associated with personal or school problems. Now, from my first-hand experience with all of my nephews and nieces, they were all emotionally disturbed and severely emotionally disturbed because the father continued the addiction and we had to go through court systems and do a bunch of different variations of a whole different variety of things that made the trauma even more problematic. I think even myself am traumatized from that experience. Now, but for the children, right? For children, they are adolescents and youth that are at these different stages of development. Now, according to our reading and some statistics, 1 out of 5 children are adolescents. 20% may have some diagnosable mental disorder. Maybe origins can be from trauma. 7.7 million to 12.8 million children have a mental disorder that may be associated with trauma. 37% have been labeled emotionally disturbed. Social and emotionally, African American Latino students are struggling to adjust to American schools, right, for a variety of reasons, whether it be socioeconomic or whatnot. Now that means that, and they constitute about 40% of the entire school population. Now this means that we have an entire section of our society that is experiencing, that can be potentially experiencing emotional disturbance. Right now, to think about this deeper in a deeper way, right? What a lot of these children need is an compassionate present. They need someone to be there to help manage their trauma. But it's a challenge in our current system because with No Child Left Behind, with our mechanization and dehumanization of our educational system, we have been kind of robbed of the ontological possibility, meaning that we have been robbed of this ability to practice being human with those who need it most, those students who are emotionally disturbed. So we live in a society of instant gratification. So how are we supposed to deal with the emotional trauma of youth and adolescents who need it? Now, according to Freire, right, we need to develop a proxies, right? So it's a way of thinking, reflecting, and acting, right? And this is, according to Freire, is directed to a structure to be transformed, meaning that it is a way of thinking about what we've experienced, and instead of acting immediately, what we do is we think about the theory, right, and then we act upon the theory and develop a appropriate proxies. Now, Gabor Mate, I think, provides us with an interesting perspective when it comes to childhood trauma. Let's take a quick look.
Behavior that a person enjoys, finds relief in, and therefore craves in the short term, but suffers negative consequences in the long term and doesn't give up despite the negative consequences. So craving pleasure, relief in the short term, negative consequences in the long term, inability to give it up. Now, notice I have said nothing about substances. I said any behavior. So it could be related to cocaine, crystal meth, heroin, fentanyl, marijuana, nicotine, alcohol, whatever. Could also be sex, gambling, internet, relationships, shopping, eating, work, extreme sports, working out, pornography, any number of human activities. So I said any behavior. Now, the official definition of addiction, according to the American Society for Addiction Medicine, is that this is it's a primary brain disorder. It arises in the brain largely due to genetic reasons. This is how they see it. And I say that's just not true. The other popular idea about addiction is that it's a choice that somebody makes, that people choose to be addicted, which is what the legal system is based on. Because if people are not choosing, what are we punishing them for? And although I think the medical definition is closer to the truth, I don't see it as genetic. It's a genetic disorder, and I don't see it as a primary brain disorder. So let me perhaps show you why, if that's okay. A human being has two fundamental needs, apart from the physical needs, in infancy, in childhood. One is for attachment. Now, attachment is the closeness and proximity with another human being for the sake of being looked after, or for the sake of looking after the other. Now, human beings, as mammals, and even birds are creatures of attachment. We have to connect and attach because otherwise we don't survive. If there's nobody that's motivated to take care of us, to attach to us that way, and we're not motivated to attach to others, we just can't survive. One interesting thing is that the endorphins, which are the body's internal opiate chemicals, which heroin and all the other opiates resemble, they help to facilitate attachment. So if you take infant mice and you knock out their endorphin receptors so they don't have endorphin opiate activity in their brain, they won't cry for help and separate from their mothers, which would mean that they would die in the wild. And which goes back to what happens in childhood when there's stress and trauma, these endorphin systems don't develop. And then when people do heroin, it feels like a warm, soft hug to them. They feel love and connection for the first time. That's why it's so powerful. But so we have this need for attachment, without which obviously the human infant, who's the most helpless, the most dependent, the least mature of any creature in the universe at birth, cannot survive without the attachment. And that attachment relationship, given that we have the longest period of development of any creature, well into adolescence and beyond, attachment is not a negotiable need. But we have another need, which is authenticity. Now, authenticity out of the self means being connected to ourselves, just knowing what we feel and being able to act on it. So that means our gut feelings. So let's look at how human beings evolved. For hundreds of thousands of years, and for 100,000 years or so of this species existing on Earth, how did we live? We didn't live in cities and houses and so on. We lived out there in the wild until very recently in human existence. Now, just how long do you survive in the wild if you're not connected to your gut feelings? Not very long. If you start using your intellect instead of your gut feelings, you just don't survive. So that's a powerful survival need as well. So attachment is a survival need. Authenticity is a survival need. But what happens if your authenticity threatens your attachment relationships? For example, as a 2-year-old, you get angry because you didn't get that cookie before dinner. But your parents can't handle anger because they grew up in homes when there was rageaholicism and they're terrified at the very expression of anger. So they give you the message that good little kids don't get angry. The message you receive is not that good little kids don't get angry, but that angry little kids don't get loved. Because your parents are now sullen, they won't look at you, they talk to you in a harsh way, you're not getting loved. Not experiencing love at that moment. Now, but you got to stay attached. Guess what you're going to suppress? The authenticity every time. And this is how we lose connection to ourselves and to our gut feelings. So that, strangely enough, that very dynamic, which is essential for human survival in a natural setting, not becomes a threat to our survival in this more modern setting, where to stay authentic is to threaten attachment.
Now, what I think this video does very well is it describes the importance of this need of attachment, but more importantly, it describes this need um, to connect, right? And this connection is extremely important, right? And for certain children who all of a sudden experience trauma, right? They are denied an attachment. I will give you some clues on that in a second. This one. Okay, now what we see happening is there are a few different factors that can create emotional disturbance. Right, there's internal factors such as genetic deficiencies, neurological impairment, brain injuries, chemical imbalances, nutritional deficiencies, use of alcohol or drugs by parents. Right, this is things that happen during the during the prenatal stage when they're in the womb. External factors could be divorce, death, or birth of a sibling, moving, changing schools, peer pressure. Now, a lot of these things mean that you lose a sense of self, you lose a sense of identity, you lose a sense of what you were once attached to, right, and give you meaning, and give you value, and make you feel secure, make you feel positive. And what we see is that we can identify certain characteristics of folks of students who have experienced an emotional disturbance by their hyperactivity, a short attention span, impulsiveness, inconsistencies of behavior, low frustration tolerance, aggression, self-injurious behavior, withdrawal from interaction with others, inappropriate social skills, immaturity, poor coping skills, they're unfocused, and they have unexplainable mood shifts. Now, from my experience with my with my nephews and nieces, they did go through an individual education program, getting access to psych services and counseling, which was a great benefit. We were exposed to social workers, and honestly, the social work system is not the best, right? But they do what they can. But oftentimes they do side with family reunification, which is can be troubling, especially if that parent is also emotionally disturbed. It continues the cycle of emotionally disturbed folks, right? And as teachers, one of the things that we need to do is identify and try to develop more of that support mechanism, right? Provide them with psychologists and guidance counselors that can help them stop the cycle of emotional disturbances. Right now, some of the strategies for teachers, right, can be to display. So a lot of students will display patterns of misbehavior, right, and we have to identify this as a cry for help, right? Provide them with structure that they might not have ever had or they lack at the moment, right? Their lives may be filled with uncertainty and instability. We need to provide them with a rock, right? Some type of way of anchoring themselves to identify that they are important, right? To give them some stability. Reinforce feelings of self-worth, right? Making sure we always make eye contact, right? Smile, praise good work, nurture the relationship. Make sure they can come to you with their behaviors, and come to you without judgment. Develop a reward system that can be discrete, where maybe it's you don't have to outright describe some type of favoritism, but you are actually making a deeper connection and figuring out a way to identify with them. Hey, you're doing a good job, right? And make it a tangible reinforcement, right? Tangible reinforcement, because when we deal with students who have had an emotional disturbance, we are in a way giving them saving their lives, right? Because and this, I think, in some situations is does play an important role as your job as more than just an educator, right? You're not just trying to teach them 1+1 or the 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 year the Constitution was signed, but you're also there to give them worth and to give them a place in society. Right. Now, for students that are aggressive or may practice abusive behavior, managing this in different ways is really important. So, removal from the classroom may be necessary. Provide protection to other students is also as important as making sure you manage the emotionally disturbed student, right? And also maybe diverting their attention and distracting from the focus of the disruptive behavior. Meaning, they might be angry because maybe somebody dropped a pencil and or dropped a marker that scuffed their shoe, right? Making them think of some deeper need or some deeper frustration. So distracting them from that. And being concerned and attention to the student experiencing mood crises, meaning that if you can tell if one of your students is going to snap or have a outburst, developing a routine, developing a space for that student to hopefully manage their crisis, right? Manage their disturbance and come back to the classroom when they're ready. But also set up like some types of codes, like, hey, if you're going to be upset, just give me a signal, right? So you are at the same time structuring their ability to cope with their crisis, right? And providing these changes and introducing these things not all at once, where it's not negotiated, but giving them a place where they can talk with you and develop a system for themselves as well. So, in praising, rewarding provides attention that leads to these improvements. So, this is my short um, my short connection to this topic, and I hope it was beneficial. And there are additional resources that are provided from our reading, right? So, Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health, National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, right? So these are some of the sources that you can use, but there are so many. The Orange County Health Department provides a plethora of um, of support for students, and also the Catholic Charities provides support for psych services at low to no cost. Right, there you go. And here are my sources as well. Right.